थैंक यू वेरी मच हसन साहब, बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया, आपने बड़ी खूबसूरत बातें की, बड़े खूबसूरत पैराए में, और आपने कंक्लूड किया कि हमने अब कबायली अवाम ने गैरत के नाम पे और कबाइल के नाम पर बहुत सारी कुर्बानियाँ भी दी और बहुत सारी मार भी खाई। हसन साहब, मैं आपको बताता चलूँ कि ये मार हमने सिर्फ गैरत के नाम पे नहीं खाई है, बल्कि कभी मज़हब के नाम पे भी खाई है।
And for inviting us to participate in this important event. We certainly think that more discussions, more dialogue, more debate about the situation in FATA and its future are particularly important today and for the future of Pakistan. So as these events are difficult to organize and to bring together different actors, they are very, very important, and we hope that you continue organizing them. Thank you very much for as well allowing us to speak a bit about the reforms. I'm also honored that the organizers think that my Urdu is good enough that I don't need some of those earphones. I will count on the fact that I've been here for many years and had the opportunity to have many extensive conversations on this subject with you, and I hope that I remember it well if I haven't been able to follow. A few points perhaps just before speaking about the issue of reforms that was assigned to me. I think that the first thing to say is that I think that we are in a very particular moment where there is a growing consensus, or at least a growing agreement, that the situation as it is today in FATA cannot continue, that the status quo cannot prevail, and that the mainstreaming of FATA is now a particularly critical necessity for the people of FATA, but also for Pakistan. And I think this is very important to acknowledge. By any measure, FATA is in a situation that is comparable to the worst of the sub-Saharan African countries, to Chad, Central African Republic. By any way that you measure the situation in FATA, you have a very low Human Development Index. We've been able to calculate it this year for the first time, but I won't bore you with statistics, and I know you know a lot about this, but education, health, access to land, situation of women, access to trade, farm to market, water access, sanitation. I mean, I could go on forever. The situation in FATA is at a level of emergency that is totally unacceptable in a country as wealthy as Pakistan in 2016. And so I think that the mainstreaming of FATA is, of course, a human rights, a citizenship necessity. It is a question of human rights. The people of FATA are citizens of Pakistan and have the right to the same things as every citizen in Pakistan, in Sargodha, Karachi or Lahore. But it is also a security and a development imperative. So that mainstreaming FATA, the process by which FATA is integrated in the rest of the country from administrative, legal and constitutional way, is critical for the development of FATA, for the security of FATA, for the stability of FATA, and I would even say that it will determine, in part, the relations with Afghanistan as well. So this is not only a question of, and I think some of you have spoken about this goes well beyond any sort of security operation or security objective. It is a moral, a developmental, and a security imperative. And I think this is very, very important, that there is a growing realization of this in the military, in the civil administration, in the journalists, and that this is increasingly spoken. Now, if there is a great consensus on that, there is not so much of a consensus on how are we going to do it. And I think this is part of the reason why such forums are so important. Let me also say, before speaking about a few principles, that I constantly hear how special FATA is. And of course, FATA is very special, has a particular history, and Tikal could speak to me about the Russians, and yes, and we can go into the, we could have a very important cultural, religious, historical analysis of FATA, but the situation in FATA, and especially the solutions in FATA, are not that different than many post-crisis and post-conflict societies around the world. And I think FATA in Pakistan has a lot to learn from many other countries in the world that are dealing with similar issues as those that are dealt in FATA. So I think it's very important not to be isolationists, and to recognize the particular situation in FATA. It's culturally different, it's complicated, it's geographically different. I was very close to it yesterday. I was in Diaihan, just by the border of South Waziristan. Very difficult, but it's not planet Mars. It is not another planet. Many other countries in the world are facing similar situations. And because of that, and it's not our role as foreigners, as international organizations, as the international community, it is by no way our role to tell the people of FATA, tell the Pakistanis what they should do or not do. And I think this is by no means our objective. I think for us, what is more important is that the process goes forward, that the debate is given, that there's a process by which these reforms go forward. The content of those reforms, what they will contain, the speed of those reforms has to be done by the Pakistanis and for Pakistan and for the people of FATA. And in that way, many of my comments today will not dwell necessarily into the detail of the reforms, because this is something that has to happen in Pakistan. But again, I hope that we can learn from other countries. And there's four things that I want to say in that respect. And this is not necessarily related to FATA, but related to the international community, the UN's experience in other countries that are facing similar situations. The first is that change will not come if we do not understand in detail and we do not consider in detail the political economy of change in FATA. There is significant interests in FATA, economic, political. I won't dwell into who has interest of what today, but you know that there's a lot of interest. There's a lot of people in this country making a lot of money by the statu quo in FATA. And this is not in the interest of Pakistan, it's not in the interest of the citizens of FATA, and if we do not tackle head-on the political economy of change, it will not be sustainable and change won't happen. And in that way, the incentives by the politicians, by the parliament, by the administration that are put in place in the process of change needs to take into consideration the political economy of FATA. It's not by hiding it or saying this doesn't exist that we will be able to change the situation for the people in FATA. The second is that we've had a number of commissions for reforms of FATA. The governor has had one, the Prime Minister has notified one. But it is also clear that the process by which decisions are consensuated and the decisions taken remains very murky. Yes? There isn't clarity about how these reforms will be rolled out. I'm not talking about what reforms, I'm talking about the process by which decisions are taken. You ask anybody in Peshawar at the FATA Secretariat about any subject, they will have a different opinion and a different proposal of how change happens. Yeah? And I think this is very important for Pakistani society, for the government, to have a consensus about what will be the process by which reforms will be put in place. And I think this is quite important, and to disaggregate this between administrative reforms, legal reforms, as well as constitutional reforms. We've published a few weeks back our latest development advocate on mainstreaming FATA, you will find in it a summary table of the information and the analysis we've been able to gather to try to map out the horizon. And I think this is one example. You'll see in one of the columns the level of undefinition of how those reforms. Sometimes it basically depends on one individual who has a good idea and decides to push it in the FATA Secretariat without any consensus of how this is going to go forward. Should we consult the MNAs of FATA or not? I don't know. Should we consult the MAPICs? I don't know. Should they be involved? Nobody knows. So there is a great level, and this in public policy is a recipe for disaster because you will always end up failing to create the type of consensus that you need. The third, and this is again from the experience in many other countries, is that nobody ever talks to the people of FATA. Okay, there was, the commission was in Pune last 2 weeks ago, and I was very happy to see consultations of FATA youth leaders and groups of women in FATA that were consulted. To my knowledge, it's been a long time that I've seen the commission speaking to these people, and I think this is a great step forward. But by no way are we going to force down the throat of the people of FATA these reforms. Citizens need to be empowered. Citizens need to be part of the process of change. This is the same in Senegal, in Chad, in Canada, in the US, and anywhere in the world. If citizens are not part of the process in a meaningful way, forget it. You will have a process of reform that will do more harm than good. And by that, there is a great deficit. And Iftikhar, this is part, I think you've done individually, a very good work in Anwar at spreading some of these analysis and information to the public, but it's mostly in English. Almost nothing exists in Urdu, nothing in Pashto. Do we think that a reform process will happen in English in Islamabad? Never. This process needs to include a very important process of social outreach, communication to the people of FATA in a language that people and citizens can understand, in Pashto, in Urdu. And I think this is very, very important. The Commission's deliberations, the Commission's publications are only in English. How are you going to involve the Maliks, the community leaders, the representatives of FATA in a process that happens only in English? As a proud French Canadian, yes, I am very sensitive to these issues, and I understand that no change can happen without this being in your language. Finally, I think that there is a great space as well for the Foreign Office to be involved in this process, because it is also clear, particularly in the light of the last month, that whatever is happening and whatever policy Pakistan has with Afghanistan and the quadrilateral talks that are happening at that level will have an influence on what happens in FATA, on the priorities for reform, and we cannot look in isolation the reform process without also looking at what is happening in Afghanistan and the process there. With these principles, and this is not rocket science, you know, the issue of the political economy of change, the clarity on the process, involvement of citizens and public outreach, and finally, the importance of the region, I could look at many, many post-conflict societies where the challenges of peace building revolve around these four themes. And that's why I wanted to highlight these four. On the reforms themselves, I won't go in a lot of detail, but we have had the opportunity, the privilege of having been involved in the detail at the FATA Secretariat, in the Governor's Office, together with many of our partners in the debates about reforms. And I believe that I agree with some of the speakers today that for us, a gradual process of reform will be critical. I think you've mentioned it, Brigadier. The experience in Pakistan with drastic reform processes, I think, have proven the importance of gradually moving. This cannot be an excuse to keep the status quo, but moving forward with considerable momentum is important, But I think it's also important to consider that these reforms need to happen somewhat organically and gradually. And I think this is particularly important if we look at the political timing. We will have elections in early 2018. How much can be achieved between now and early 2018, where the conversation will be perhaps with other civilian leadership, other military leadership? So we need to look at that and to see what is it that we can achieve in the next 18 to 24 months that will bring us forward in terms of reform process, and that will have the biggest bang for the rupee in terms of reform. And this process will not move in a beautiful linear way. This will be multi-level with different speed, and I think we need to recognize that. There's three levels of reform: the administrative, the legal, and of course the constitutional. And I think that one last thing that I want to say is to say a few words about the different administrative reforms that are on the table at the moment. And certainly, the conversation right now is at a point where decisions will need to be taken soon, but there are a lot of good ideas, of low-hanging fruits out there that we can benefit if we take those opportunities. They include improvement in the delivery of social services. A big challenge in FATA right now is not building new schools or new health facilities. It's actually making those that are there working with teachers that are qualified. There's a great process right now of rationalization that is being done at the FATA Secretariat with our support and the support of many partners. This is very welcome. The nomination, the notification of 6 municipal committees, the development of local government rules for those municipal communities, and with budgets for urban areas is a great step forward. The debate right now on levies, on the capacity of levies, of exchange programs, that levies of one agency go and work in another agency, the establishment of 57 new levies posts, the upcoming debate on land titles. So I'm giving a few examples here to say that there's a lot that is going on, that is not known sufficiently, that is not socialized sufficiently, that we can benefit and then build further processes of reform. Only while we move on these administrative reforms will concrete ideas for legal reforms, for extension of laws into FATA by the governor and the president can be tabled. But also this will bring the citizens, and this will involve the citizens in the reform process. For example, municipal service committees, municipal service desk where people of FATA can come and get marriage licenses, marriage certificates, sorry, not licenses, marriage certificates, and they'll need to go to Peshawar. I mean, there's a lot that we can do to bring citizens of FATA closer to Pakistan, even if the debate on the future of FATA as a province, as a part of KP goes on. So I will stop there. But I hope that those elements bring added fuel to the debate, which I hope goes on with added energy and determination, because this is important for the future of FATA, but for the stability of Pakistan and for the development of Pakistan. Thank you very much.